Hello boys and girls, Lord Hawkeye here again. This video is a bit of a collection of a couple of random ideas that I didn't think were individually enough to make a whole video about, so hope you forgive if this feels a little schizophrenic to you. Anyways, one of the big themes to them though is how often you notice parallels between what statists argue and what creationists argue. I haven't talked about creationists much, but anyways. One of them is, you remember how people often ask creationists, if God is a source of truth and understanding, why is there so much confusion within the realm of religion? I mean, there's different religions, different strains of religion, different splinterings, and even among them there's massive, massive disagreement. I mean, compare this to science, where if I asked 10 different scientists from 10 different corners of the world the same science question, they would all send me back the exact same answer. Maybe, with maybe a slight variation, but for the most part, there's general agreement among most fundamentals of science. And yet, if I asked 10 different people all sitting in the same pew in a church a question about God, I highly doubt I would get the same answer from any of them. It'd be different answers all around. So that's just an idea. And so that's just something I noticed among statism too. I mean, if government is the answer, if it's the correct answer, if it's the way to go, why is there so much disagreement about what government is the right one? Some say no, communism right. Some say no socialism is right. No, free markets are right. No, let the citizens have guns. No, ban the guns. Let them have dogs. No, ban the dogs. And big government, small government, meddle in the economy, don't meddle in the economy. Elections, electoral college, and blah 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 blah. It goes on and on and on, and no sign of either side conceding to the other. And I ask, why? If this is the right way to go, how come all governments are not gradually all converging towards what is the correct one like you would expect from a scientific theory? If this is really based on facts, why is there so much confusion? That's just something to think about. Because there is you'll find a lot of consensus among my crowd. I mean, it's the non-aggression principle is universally accepted among anti-statists. I mean, that's why we're anti-statists. And there's way less disagreements. Like, we might disagree on a few minor things. There's a couple people who think we do need a little government, but it also, of course, that brings up the issue of how does that not violate the non-aggression principle. But for the most part, fundamentally, we all agree. And yeah, I can see how that might look like a cult from afar when you're used to everyone disagreeing about everything. But hey, scientists often agree with everything, and no one ever calls them cults. Well, I hope not. So, that's just a thought for you. Next thought. The old love it or leave it argument. Oh, we still love this one. But here's another thought. Here's another idea for all you people who still like to preach the love it or leave it argument. Sorry, truck going by. Anyways. Okay, so the argument is, as long as you're not forcibly prevented from leaving, pretty much anything the government does is moral. Taxation, no problem. Doesn't matter as long as you're free to leave. The government is shielded from any moral implications. Now, even though that's complete nonsense that you'd never accept from anyone other than governments, so it's an argument of convenience. But here, consider this for an idea, statists. Let's say you have a government who absolutely taxes everyone into the ground, just keeps them poor. Everyone's barely got enough to get by because the government just takes all their money and blows it on whatever it wants. Now, this government does not prevent people from leaving. They can leave if they want to, but the government just keeps them so poor that they can't possibly leave. Here's a direct question for you guys. Would you consider this to be a moral situation? The government's not forcibly stopping them from leaving. He's just setting the situation up so that trying to leave is a completely uphill battle that most people simply haven't the means to do, even if they wanted to. Or how about, what if the government makes the airline as big an ordeal as it possibly can, or What if the government makes you fill out years and years of paperwork before you can leave and all this sort of thing? At what point in your mind would it classify as forcibly preventing you from leaving and thus violating your idea? If you think this doesn't matter because your country doesn't do that, consider this. Whatever country you live in, I guarantee taxes are going up. And they have been for a long time. Every time something bad happens, your government says, we need more money, we need more power, and we can fix this. I ask you, do you really think at some point your government is going to say, okay, that's enough. We don't need any more money. We're good. Now we can get all these problems solved, and you're going to love it. Do you seriously think at some point they're going to stop demanding more money? Really? Think about it. Because remember, when we say you're heading towards that, this is not silly prophecies. This is just incentives. If you could just keep asking for a higher salary and the effort required to stop you was so much that most people didn't even bother, would you ever stop demanding raises? Of course you wouldn't. You're incentivized to keep asking for them. And also ask yourself, every time there's a disaster, every time something bad happens, that's a reason for your government to get more money and more power. Now you tell me, would that incentivize your government to prevent disasters? Or would that incentivize them to let them happen so that they can keep demanding more money and more power? Just look at the incentives. This is something that you statists seem to keep forgetting. Yeah, corporations follow incentives, and sometimes that leads them to doing bad things. But you need to remember, politicians follow incentives too. Don't forget that. Just an idea for you. And my last thought. I love this one. Now it seems the statists are going with the government owns the land, so the taxation is rent. It's totally legit angle. Now, notwithstanding, this just opens up massive questions like, okay, wait, so if the government's my landlord and I'm paying rent to them, then why am I paying rent to my landlord? Is he scamming me? Or how about the question of, okay, how did they get this land? Did they buy it? With what money? Money they took from another country? Oh, that they happen to own that one and they took the money to pay that from another country and it's all just turtles all the way down? Or how about the question of, even if they did own the land, that doesn't make pointing guns at people okay. Your landlord can't set silly rules whenever he wants to. That's all agreed upon before you move in, right? Why does the government get to just change the rules because they feel like it? It's just ridiculous. But let's accept that for a second, because there's something very interesting that arises. Okay, so the government owns the land. That's their claim. All right. Think about this. Statists argue that we need a government to enforce property rights, that you'd have no property rights if there weren't a government because everyone could just take whatever they wanted. Also complete nonsense, but let's accept that as truth as well. So think about this. Property rights are not possible without an overarching authority to enforce them. But the government owns the land, and yet there is no overarching authority over them. Think about that. So property rights is not possible without an overarching authority, while the government owns the land with no overarching authority over it. I'm sure anyone who's debated creationists won't find this argument to be entirely unfamiliar. Remember that? We know there's a God because everything has to have a creator. Okay, who created God? Crickets chirping. So, even if we accept this argument, it still just serves as proof that property rights are possible without an overarching authority. How's that for a little bit of irony for you? Until next time, be aware and be wise.